How does a failed movement, its leader executed and its followers in hiding, conquer the world? In 30 AD Jerusalem, behind a locked door, a small group of men are hiding. Their charismatic leader has just been publicly executed by the Roman state. By every logical measure, their movement is over. Rome could come for them at any moment. They are terrified, broken, and scattered. Yet, just 50 days later, these same men are standing in the city's most crowded square, preaching to thousands, afraid of nothing. What could possibly have happened in those 50 days to cause such a radical transformation? This is that story. Don't picture these men as saints in stained glass windows. Picture them as they were, fishermen and tax collectors whose world had just ended. Peter, their designated leader, had loudly denied even knowing Jesus 3 times. The others had abandoned him. They were back to square one, their hopes crushed. The historical accounts, written by their own followers, admit they were hiding for fear. This isn't an accusation from critics, it's a confession. The story of those 50 days isn't just about the birth of a faith, it's about the most profound reversal in human history. In the heart of a hostile Jerusalem, behind a bolted wooden door, a dozen men held their breath. This was not a fortress, but a cage of their own making. Their leader, the man they called Messiah, was gone. The air was thick with the metallic scent of fear and the stale aroma of failure. Peter, once the boldest, now felt only the crushing weight of his own loud denials, the crow of the rooster an echo in his soul. He was a fisherman again, but the sea felt a world away. They had abandoned everything. Family, nets, futures, for a dream that had ended in a public spectacle. The Bible itself records their state, hiding, terrified. This isn't an accusation from their enemies, it's the stark, honest confession of the men who were there. Their movement was, by every rational measure, finished. The future was a blank wall, as featureless and imposing as the locked door in front of them. Dawn's first light did not bring hope, but panic. It came with the frantic arrival of the women from their circle. Their words tumbled out, a chaotic story of a moved stone, missing guards, and an empty tomb. To the men steeped in fear, it sounded like madness. A cruel Roman trick? A desecration by grave robbers? Logic warred with a terrifying flicker of hope they dared not entertain. For them, hope had become a dangerous liability. But the women's conviction was unshakable. Compelled by an illogical, desperate need to see for themselves, to confront the impossible, 2 men broke from the group. Peter and John, the fisherman and the beloved disciple, burst from the suffocating room into the cool morning air. They ran, their feet pounding on the ancient stones, not towards a miracle, but towards the cold, hard fact of an empty grave. The race was on. He had appeared. In the very room they had locked for safety, he stood among them. The encounter shattered their reality, but one of them, Thomas, was absent. When told, his reaction was not joy, but a fortress of doubt. He was a pragmatist, a man who trusted what his hands could touch. He would not be swayed by what he deemed grief-induced visions or collective hysteria. Unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were, and put my hand into his side, I will not believe. His demand was absolute. For a week, he was an island of skepticism in a sea of his friends' fantastic claims. He was alone with his logic, a cold comfort against their unbelievable joy. Then, a week later, they were gathered again. The doors were locked, and suddenly he was there, turning his attention directly to the doubter. The 40 days that followed were a complete re-education. The setting shifted from the claustrophobic confines of Jerusalem to the open, windswept hills of Galilee. He was not a distant specter, but a tangible presence. They walked with him along the shore of the lake, ate grilled fish with him on the beach, and listened as he reframed everything they thought they knew. The conversations were no longer about political liberation or overthrowing Rome. He spoke of a different kind of kingdom, a different kind of power. He gave them a new blueprint for the future, a commission that seemed both impossible and inevitable. Take this story to the ends of the earth. The fear that had paralyzed them was steadily replaced by a quiet, profound sense of purpose. They were no longer fugitives in hiding, but apprentices being prepared for a global task. Their world was being remade. He ascended, leaving them on a hillside, gazing into an empty sky, They returned to Jerusalem, to that same upper room, but the atmosphere had changed. The fear was gone, replaced by a tense, expectant stillness. They were waiting, though they weren't entirely sure for what. 10 days passed. The city outside swelled with pilgrims for the Jewish festival of Pentecost, a vibrant, noisy sea of humanity. Then, it happened. Not a quiet revelation, but an explosion of sound. A noise like a violent, rushing wind filled the entire house, a physical force that shook them to the core. It was the final transformative piece of the puzzle. In that moment, they were no longer just disciples or witnesses, they were ignited. The last vestiges of doubt and timidity were burned away, replaced by an unshakable, fiery conviction. The door was about to be thrown open for good.